What we're going to do in this tutorial is have a look at how to create some different types of web backgrounds using Photoshop CS 5.1. And first of all, designing web backgrounds, we're going to open up the medium.psd file here, and you can use Photoshop to design small graphics which can then be repeated using HTML in the likes of Dreamweaver to actually create backgrounds that repeat horizontally or vertically behind the content of your website. The advantage of doing this is that one very small file can actually cover the entire background of your web page, and it downloads very quickly and displays almost instantly in the user's browser. So if we have a look at a couple of these HTML files in the browser just to get an idea of what we're talking about. The first one is medium.html, and this shows a small graphic or a medium-sized graphic which has been used as a background. Small.html gives us a look at a smaller version of that. We've got contrast.html, which shows quite a high contrast image against and you have to be careful when you're using various types of contrast and text and images. So if you look at brightness and dark type, you'll see you just need to be careful of putting dark text against dark backgrounds or light text against light backgrounds, because they can become hard to read. So and you should always stay away from medium contrast backgrounds, because generally they would be the most prone to difficulties in terms of legibility and being able to read the text against backgrounds. So we're going to look at optimizing a tiling background now. So if we open up the medium2.psd file, and one of the great features of Photoshop CS 5.1 is that you can actually write HTML code directly from the Save for Web window, and you can use it to repeat an image as a background without leaving Photoshop at all, and Photoshop actually creates the HTML code for you. So if we open up the Save for Web window and we're going to choose a GIF file, we're going to optimize this graphic as a GIF. I will reduce the number of colors down to 8 to make the file size smaller, as we've seen before. And the only option we need to change is if we go to the flyout menu on the top right of the screen and choose Edit Output Settings from the drop-down menu. And then from the drop-down menu in the Edit Output Settings, we want to select Background Image. So this will automatically create a background image out of our graphic and put it into a HTML page. So if we click OK and go back to Save for Web and preview, click the preview button on the bottom of the Save for Web window, then we get to see what the background image actually would look like in a web browser. Click close down the preview and click Done in Save for Web to remember our settings, and we're just going to change something about the image to see how this will reflect the change in the browser window. So I'm going to change the image size of the file to make it a little bit smaller. So go to Image Size in your Image menu, make the file smaller, go back to Save for Web and preview the smaller image in your browser. If we click Save at this stage, then we can choose from the drop-down menu HTML and Images, and from the settings choose Background, and then just click Save, and Photoshop will save your image file in a folder called Images, and it will create a HTML file wherever you asked it to save. So check the folder or the desktop wherever you've saved it and preview the files in your browser just to make sure that they're all working. And you can open up the GIF file in your Images folder as well just to see what Photoshop has actually done here. It's created a HTML file plus an Images folder, and inside that folder is the GIF, the optimized GIF file that we created. So there's a couple of different types of backgrounds that you can actually create. We've looked at tiling a background. The next type is a symmetrical background. So you can create various types of patterns. We're going to open up the pattern1.psd file, and you can see this small icon in the middle. First thing we're going to do is make the canvas a little bit bigger. So I'm going to use the canvas size window in the image menu, and resize this canvas to 200 pixels by 200 pixels. And I'm just going to make sure that the center positioning grid is selected so that our graphic is in the center of the image. Now I'm going to create a new layer beneath the one that's already there, and to do that all I have to do is hold down the Control key on a PC or Command on a Mac and click on the new layer icon in the layers panel, and a new layer will be created beneath the one that's selected. I'm going to fill the layer white, so we've got a white background, and rename it BG or background. I'm going to rename layer 1 as corners, and we'll see why in a moment. So on the corners layer I'm going to select all, so I can go to the select menu or just press Command and A, and I'm going to copy the blue icon, Command C, and then deselect, Command D. Next we're going to go to the filter menu and choose offset, and then I'm going to select wrap around. I'm going to add 100 pixel offset to the horizontal and a 100 pixel offset to the vertical. So as we can see when we do this, it puts our image into the four corners of our document window. Next I'm going to paste the original icon onto a new layer and rename it center. So now we've got the icon in the center and the four corners are occupied by the four corners which have been divided by offsetting our image. So now we can preview the results in Save for Web and just check for any changes. We can make the file size as small as we want, reduce the number of colors with the GIF as usual, and click Done. In the preview that we looked at, the contrast was a little bright for what we might be looking for. So we're going to use the eyedropper tool now to select the blue color of the icon and use the color picker then to reduce the saturation. If I click on the S in the color picker for saturation and choose a lighter shade of blue, click OK, and then I'm going to fill this center image, and to do that I'm going to lock the pixel lock icon and choose Edit Fill from the foreground color, or I can just press Alt and delete, and I'm going to do the same then for the offset corners. I'm going to save for web and reduce the number of colors to 8, no dither, and save. So now we can check our folder, just open up the HTML file to see what the symmetrical pattern looks like as our background image. The next type of background we'll look at is a striped background. So if we open up the stripes.psd file and save for web, preview what it looks like, we can see the background creates a very nice striped effect down the page. We can also use this striped small graphic in Photoshop in different ways. So if we click Done to remember our settings and go back to the document window and go to the image rotate option and rotate the image by 90 degrees clockwise. Go back to Save for Web and click Preview, and now we've got horizontal stripes. So the first time it was automatically vertically down the page, now it has become horizontal. Okay, so if we go back to our document again, select the pencil tool and start drawing some squiggly lines along various points. And then if we open up the paintbrush tool and also open up the brush panel so that we can experiment with a few different types of brushes. And I'm going to use the expand spacing to 200% option here so that we get this dotted effect with the brush. And you can try this. I would encourage you to experiment with different brush types just to get different effects in that way, explore a few different types, and then save for web and preview what it's going to look like. And we can see that we can get some very nice effects just by playing around with the different patterns in our document window. The next type of background is a full screen background. So we've looked now at tiling, symmetrical, and striped backgrounds. If you wanted to create a background that would fill in the entire background of your web page as one image, no pattern, no repetition, then it's a full screen background, and you would need to make an image large enough so that it would be bigger than anybody's browser window, or it would be big enough to fill anybody's browser window. So if we open up the big stripes.psd file, we can illustrate what this would look like. So as I said, full screen backgrounds must be bigger or equal in size to the end user's browser window. The problem with this is that as a web designer, you can never foresee or control the end user's screen resolution or the size that their browser is going to be on their desktop. So it's impossible to actually predict. So it can be quite a risky thing to use a full screen background, but you can make estimates and attempt to get a size that will be suitable for the most number of users as possible. If we open up the browser sizes.psd file, we can see here the different variations of monitor size screen resolution is illustrated. And the problem is, if a user has a monitor resolution of 640 by 480 and your full screen background is 1024 by 768, then they're only going to see a small portion of it. Again, if it's 800 by 600 and you've got a larger screen background, they'll only see still a small portion of it. However, the reverse is also true. If you design a background that's 480 by 640 and somebody has a resolution of 1024 by 768, then the background is going to appear tiny against their browser window, and there's going to be a lot of white space around it. So you're trying to get the balance right somewhere in between, and there are statistics for how many people are using different size monitors and so on. But this is a moving target, so you just have to be careful with this. But just to illustrate how it works, if we drag the browser sizes PSD file onto the big stripes PSD file, we can see just this background image, what it would look like at various screen resolutions. And if I just detach the document window so that it becomes a floating window, and I can drag the corner from 1024 by 768 up to 800 by 600 and up to 640 by 480, just so we can see this is actually what we would see if we had this particular screen resolution, which may not be ideal in most situations. So if we go to Save for Web now and preview this full screen background, we'll just have a look at what it would look like in the browser window. And the main idea is that it's big enough so that it won't repeat in anybody's browser window. Okay, and the last type of background that we're going to look at is a gradient background. So if we open up a new file and make it, say, 100 pixels wide by 800 pixels high, and then select our gradient fill tool and just choose two colors. I'm going to just choose maybe a blue and a white color here for my gradient, and then I'm going to create a gradient from top to bottom with white at the top and fading down to blue at the bottom. Next, I'm going to go into the image size menu and change the width of the image to 5 pixels wide. You may need to just uncheck the constraint proportions or lock proportions option there. So I want 5 pixels wide by 800 pixels high. I'm going to save for web and preview the background image to see what it looks like, and we can see we get this nice gradient effect going across the entire width of the page.